Greetings, I am Ava Files, and this is my answer to the lecture questions. First, what I agree with, um, those were many things during the lecture that I really agreed with, but one thing that stuck with me, especially, was our first conversation about significant mental health issues in the Black community. I think it was so important to talk about how a lot of times we perpetuate those stigmas of therapy being abnormal or making you weak or talking too proper, too white, being whitewashed. I think there is obviously cultural misorientation that comes with shrinking to adapt to institutionalized racism, but it's also something to be aware of how Black people can contribute in their own communities by strengthening their own communities through that mental collective action, and collective activism. Also, I really agreed with how we talked about the intersectionality of faith and Indigenous practices. A lot of times in the book and throughout the course, we talked about how Christianity, especially, is really truly tied to colonialism and Eurocentricity. But in modern times, it really is necessary to take everything with a grain of salt and to put it into the context of who we are, our identities, and all of that nuance. Secondly, what I disagreed with was the quotes from Dr. Samuel Cartwright. I truly believe that saying that mental illness or drapetomania for enslaved Africans translates to wanting to escape oppression and pain and violence. I believe that that is just so false and so disheartening that someone who is a respected member of society and who people would listen to would perpetuate that stigma that really translates over to today, especially the di dysesthesia Ethiopica, saying that Africans and Black people are lazy. That still translates today to the welfare conversations that we have all the time, even though a lot of for based on current um, statistics, white people make up the majority of those who receive welfare benefits and SNAP benefits. Um, Thirdly, my biggest takeaway truly was I really liked the way that Dr. Akbar described that we live in a sick society. So naturally, people are going to be ill in a way, in a psychological sense. And all of these disorders that Black people can have, I believe that that really is a big takeaway for me to really kind of conceptualize because we hear about, oh, we're so far away from our roots or what we would have done in indigenous practices had we had slavery not happened, had the MAFA not happened. So I think having that conversation about truly identifying these traits and behaviors that are not normal can really help for Black people to reclaim their identity and break away from that Eurocentricity. And then finally, my thoughts truly are one talking about, I really love to talk about self-actualization. And I think this whole class has really been just so great for me to think about how these things apply in my life and how I can contribute. So through mentorship of Black boys and Black girls, making sure that they are not adultified, but also not infantilized, that they truly get to live out the stages that other people get to live out, and also realizing that it is mentally ill to have 250 years of abusing people based on the color of their skin and having these modern implications of DEI cuts and education cuts and even maternal health cuts truly to disenfranchise just so many groups of people based on the melanin in their genetic makeup. So I believe that truly these Western ideals are something that we need to be aware of and talk more about so that we can have that conversation and then finally have that collective action to truly do something about it, to make sure that we are not stopped, that we carry on the beliefs and the traditions of our ancestors. While I cannot say like other people can when they introduce themselves, like I'm Italian or my great grandfather, blah, 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 I can at least know that that spirit of resistance was very present in my ancestors, and I can continue to reflect that in my everyday actions and the way I speak and present myself so that I can strengthen and empower other people in my community to really continue that. And to answer the question about what changed my perspective after the lecture and how, I would say the first thing, well, the one thing would be how oppression is the most severe form of inhuman condition. I think we are socialized to believe that slavery was for economic means or it was just in the context of the time period. But I think realizing how much pain and destruction can come from stopping another whole group of people from becoming, from self actualizing, whether it's economic, social, or spiritual, mental. I think that is so destructive, and how that has changed my perspective is truly realizing that we don't always have to keep internalizing this anti self image or self destructive image. It can really just be okay to say that this was inhumane and this practice, this behavior that is socialized and institutionalized is evidence of mental illness, and it's not normal, and it's not a normal function of a normal person. And I think that's so important to really highlight, and going forward I will definitely apply that to my thinking and my behavior, not to replace hate with hate, but to know how I go about my life in the future.